Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our second session of the CFR training webinar series for the 1920 fiscal year consolidated fiscal report. We had a good session yesterday, and that recording will be posted shortly to the OMH website, along with each session we do this week. We had approximately 500 attendees again today that are expected to attend, so we hope that the webinar is helpful for creating a complete and accurate CFR. Today's webinar will focus on general and agency-specific changes and highlights, steps to a successful submission, and claims reporting. To address some of the concerns from yesterday's webinar, everyone has been placed on mute upon entry, so we cannot hear you. And I will be checking to make sure everyone's on mute going throughout the day, throughout the webinar. My name is Ken Glenmeyer. I work for OPWDD, and I am the host for today's webinar. Today's panelists will be as follows. Representing OASAS is Paul Green and Paul Sutton. Representing OMH is James Shelker, Michelle Chalinsky, and Kathy Katz. Representing OPWDD is Francis Vasilio, Alpa Amin, and myself. And representing DOH is Jeffrey Nickerson. Please note that representatives from SED will not be present at these training sessions, and information regarding SED programs will not be covered. SED encourages filers to review the CFR online training modules located on the rate setting unit's website. Also, because this is our first webinar series for training on the CFR, we do appreciate any feedback, so please take the time to fill out the post survey after you leave the event. It will help us make these trainings better. Some of the goals, as we mentioned yesterday, for these trainings, one is to introduce providers to the New York State CFR software, provide New York State agency contact information for specific questions not covered during the session, help providers become familiar with the claiming and supplemental schedules, discussing important policies, principles, and rules regarding completion of the CFR, and also identifying any major changes that have occurred since the last time you guys reported. So this is, we mentioned this yesterday, and this is very important. We strongly encourage all attendees to ask questions through the Q&A function in the webinar. So this is this function is available in the WebEx system that you're on right now. It's on your right-hand side. If you don't see a Q&A box or like an arrow with a Q&A, go to the three little buttons. There's three little dots on the bottom of your the webinar where the PowerPoint is, and click on that and go up to Q&A, and that should bring that box up on your right-hand side. That'll allow you to ask us questions. We will not be addressing those questions during this presentation, but we will be responding to each question shortly after the presentation ends, and we'll be posting that on the OMH website along with all the recordings. Another important topic is due to the current pandemic, we have added a new schedule to help us understand the impact of COVID and how the impact has had on each provider. This schedule is called COVID-19. After this webinar has been completed, I would recommend scrolling through the presentation to slide 296 and reading through the section. On the third session this week, tomorrow's session, we are encouraging questions to be submitted ahead of time, as we have built time into the webinar to address any questions that have been submitted. So after this webinar, read through the section and submit any questions you might have to OMH's email address. It's at cfr@omh.ny.gov. So I'll say that again. Read through that section and submit any questions you might have to OMH's CFR mailbox so it's cfr@omh.ny.gov, which is also listed on this page as well. So here's the contact information for each state agency. We have the names, or the names, numbers, and email addresses for OPWDD, and I assume for all the other agencies. We are strongly encouraging email the mailbox, because we have multiple people viewing that email box daily, and we have limited staff in the office answering phone calls. So for OPWDD, at least, email is the best way to contact us. Also, SED is one of the participating agencies on the CFR. However, they will not be represented in this training. Therefore, any questions or concerns you may have for SED-related issues should be directed to your SED contact. Contact information for the New York State Aid Department is as follows. OMH State Aid Department is 518-473-7885. OASAS State Aid Department is 518-457-5553. OPWDD State Aid Department is 518-402-4321. For New York State Office of Children and Family Services, providers may submit questions regarding their CFR submission to the OMH CFR unit. For New York State Department of Health, providers may submit questions regarding their CFR submissions by email to mhrs@health.ny.gov. And now I will pass it off to the first presenter. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Jimmy Shelker, and I'm from the Office of Mental Health. In this section, I'm going to cover the CFR highlights, the supplementals, and general changes. Lastly, I'll go over the OMH, DOH, and OCFS specific changes. It is important. It's important to review the changes listed in the transmittal letter when completing the CFR. Changes in funding source codes or program codes may require immediate corrections when carrying data forward from a prior version of the CFR software to the current version of the CFR software. Executive Order 38 went live July 1st, 2014, and providers are directed to visit the EO38 website for more information about this. The following are some important internal controls to help prevent and detect fraud. I'll go over a few of these. Number one, using a system of checks and balances to ensure no one person has control over all parts of a financial transaction. Number three, restricting the use of agency credit cards and verifying all charges made to credit cards or accounts were business related. 4, provide Board of Directors oversight of agency operations and management. 5, prepare all fiscal policies and procedures in writing and obtain Board of Directors approval. Let's skip to number 8, protect checks against fraudulent use. And 10, avoid or discourage related party transactions. Additional information can be found on the OMH website at that link provided. There are now CFR training modules posted on YouTube for the purpose of lending additional guidance on CFR reporting. The CFRS software help menu offers guidance on importing and formatting a text file, which can be a time-saving method of populating the CFR directly from spreadsheets. Using a specially formatted text file, you can import CFR1 expenses and revenues as well as other data. For more information on this, see the importing a text file in the help menu in the CFRS software. This next section is changes, general changes to the manual. After a short period of policy modification, the reporting of vacation leave accruals is reverting back to the historical method, which is defined as the amount of change between the vacation leave accruals posted at the end of the prior cost report period and the end of the current cost report period. This must correspond directly to the salaries that are reported on line 16 of CFR 1 and line 1 of CFR 3. Section 2 of the CFR manual was revised. Guidance was added for DOH and OCFS only reporting requirements. The combination matrix was updated to include DOH and OCFS submission requirements. A chart was added that lists the schedules that each funding state agency requires for full CFRs. In Section 3, the CFR manual and software were revised so that OPWDD, SED, DOH, and OCFS service providers can only create CFRs with a beginning date of January 1st and an end date of December 31st of the same year, or a beginning date of July 1st and an end date of June 30th. Also, language was added to Section 3 to address the CFR reporting of special legislative grants for these agencies. Section 8 of the CFR manual was revised. An FAQ was added to provide guidance on reporting the costs of a defined benefit post-retirement plan other than pensions. An FAQ was added to provide guidance on reporting children and family treatment support services programs on the CFR if designation was for more than one population. The FAQ on reporting unrelated business income tax, UBIT, on the CFR has been removed. The 2017 provision of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that levied a federal tax on parking and transportation benefits provided by nonprofit organizations has been repealed. An FAQ was added to provide guidance on whether an agency is required to file if they operated a program for only a portion of a reporting period due to situations such as a late start to the program, discontinuation of the program, or a merger into another agency. Beginning with the calendar year 2019 reporting period, the New York State DOH and the New York State OCFS will require specific programs to be reported on the CFR. You can refer to Section 67 of Appendix HH and Section 68, which is Appendix II, for a list of the programs that are required to be reported. Sections 10, 11, and 12 of the CFR manual were updated to include DOH and OCFS as agencies that would require providers to submit the CFR-I, the IIA, and the IV as part of a full CFR submission. In section 13, line 3, instructions for determining program site identification numbers was added for DOH and OCFS service providers. Providers should use the first 4 digits of their agency code and the first 3 digits of their program code. In section 14 on the CFR2, that was updated with 2 additional columns to accommodate DOH and OCFS. Section 15, line 47 through line 77 have been renumbered to include DOH and OCFS. Section 13 of the manual and schedule CFR1 were updated. Line 13 is the calculated total of lines 13A, 13B, and 13C, which is for Medicaid and other units of service. Line 40, which is the other line, a predefined entry titled Bad Debt, was added for OASAS, OMH, OPWDD, and the other agencies. Line 79, which is federal grants, predefined entries related to COVID-19 were added. Line 97, the provision for bad debts revenue deduction, these line instructions were updated. OMH will provide additional guidance on the completion of our units of service in the supplementals later in this presentation. Section 15 of the CFR manual and schedule CFR3 were updated as follows. Line 17, which is the other line, a predefined entry titled Bad Debt was added. Also, lines 24 and 25 in sections 22 and 20 were updated to include predefined entries related to COVID-19. Section 33B, which is the COVID-19 schedule of the manual, specifically known as the COVID-19 informational schedule, has been added effective July 1st, 2019. The COVID-19 schedule should be used by providers to report increases in program admin and program site expenses and revenues in the reporting period on a program site-specific basis that are specifically related to COVID-19. Section 43, that's Appendix J, of the CFR manual was updated to include guidelines for the COVID-19 special considerations. Please note Section 33C was also created for SCD-only reporting of COVID-19 expenses and revenues. Additional guidance regarding COVID-19 reporting will be provided in Session 3. Okay, in this section, we're going to cover now the OMH supplemental schedules. And there are 4 supplemental schedules that are specific to OMH. And those are listed there, OMH 1 through OMH 4. Okay, OMH 1, we'll start with, captures all units of service for all OMH programs. Appendix F details the units of service for each OMH program. Total units of service on OMH1 transfers to Schedule CFR1, line 13, and Schedule DMH1, line 3. Total units of service must match the aggregate total of units of service on a DMH3 for the same program. Units of service are very important to us. They're used to capture and to determine cost per unit of service for financial planning purposes. The OMH1 units of service by program is only completed for OMH programs that file a full CFR. So on this screen, you would select the program and site up on the top. Those are drop-down boxes. You'd scroll down to your program, you'd enter data, and click Save. Next schedule is OMH2, and OMH2 is completed for program sites that accrued Medicaid fee-for-service or Medicaid managed care revenue for service providers. Units of service are reported separately for Medicaid managed care and Medicaid fee-for-service. The total program units of service reported will transfer from OMH2 to Schedule CFR1, lines 13A and B, respectively. The Medicaid units of service on the OMH2 should not be more than the Medicaid units of service reported on the OMH1. The OMH2 Medicaid units of service by program site is only completed for OMH programs that file a full CFR and receives Medicaid revenue for services provided. This schedule is set up the same way as OMH1, except it's been updated to track units of service separately for Medicaid fee-for-service revenues and Medicaid revenues received as part of Medicaid managed care. Each line on the schedule, you'll see an A and B for this purpose. This is the second half of the OMH2. Everything's totaled, as you can see at the bottom. Okay. Our next schedule is OMH3. Here you'd enter the number of clients served by the program. This may differ from the number of admissions because a person can be admitted more than once. Caseload at the start of the current period should equal the caseload at the end of the prior period. The OMH3 captures the number of persons served by the program and site for the year. This is, the example here is a program without an ongoing caseload. The beginning and ending numbers on lines 1 and 4 will be 0. You would indicate the same number of persons served on lines 2 and 3. These numbers will indicate how many people were seen and how many left. And here is an example of a program with an ongoing caseload. You would indicate the number of persons on the active caseload as of the beginning of the reporting period on line 1. Then you'd indicate the number of persons admitted to the program during the period in line 2, and the number of persons terminated from active enrollment will be reported on line 3, and this should include all persons not seen or contacted within 90 days. Determine the active caseload as of the end of the reporting period on line 4 by adding lines 1 and 2 and subtracting line number 3. Okay. Our next schedule is OMH4 and is used to capture units of service for OMH clinic treatment programs, which is program code 2100. This schedule captures units of service and revenue source by payer. Units of service data is used in the safety net payment calculation. Total units of service on schedule OMH4 line 15 should be similar or equal to OMH1 line 16. Here you would select the program and site and then fill in the applicable data. This schedule must be completed based on date of service rendered and only for services provided during the reporting period. For the purposes of this schedule, a visit is defined as including all procedures provided to a patient on the same day and is referred to as a threshold visit. Okay, in the next section, we'll talk about the OMH changes, and these are specific to our agency. Beginning with Section 2, the following language was added. OMH service providers completing a full CFR are not required to have the CFR certified by an independent CPA if all the following criteria are met. And that is, they don't operate a clinic treatment program, a community residence program, continuing on, day treatment, residential treatment facilities, and such. Secondly, the combined Medicaid and aid to locality funding for all OMH programs is $250,000 or less. In Section 8, OMH revised their FAQ on allowable food and beverage expenses. The following was added: the cost of food and meal supplies and non-alcoholic beverages is allowable for employees involved in an emergency response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can click on or copy and paste that link to review the restrictions that they have on that. Okay. Section 22, revisions were made to line 39, which is other non-GAAP adjustments, and that was revised. The OMH predefined entry for OMH share Medicaid community resident exempt income was revised, renamed to community resident exempt income owed to OMH for current period. And the OMH predefined entry provider share Medicaid CR exempt income and non-Medicaid CR was removed. All right. Section 39, these program codes were added, 5020, 5030, and 0680. Additionally, in Section 39, these codes were deleted. 2240 through 2400, and that's for child and youth HCBS consolidated waiver programs. All right. Additionally, in Section 39, these two programs were also deleted, 0820 and 1340. And below that, these codes were revised, 1510, 0910, 2680. Section 50, Appendix Q, was revised to include guidance on calculating the Medicaid exempt income owed for OMH providers who operate a community residence program or other residential program which has Medicaid exempt income. OMH providers should continue to use the Mental Health Provider Data Exchange, commonly known MHPD, to submit corrections, opening, and closures of programs. Okay, in this section, we're going to cover the DOH highlights, supplements, and changes. New for the fiscal 1920 CFR reporting period, certain programs operated by Department of Health will be included on the CFR. All right. Stand by one moment as I try to locate my mouse clicker, which has mysteriously disappeared. Maybe the battery died in my mouse clicker, but stand by 1 minute. Okay. Hey Ken, you think you could advance the slide for me as I read through?
Yes, I will do that. I was going to say,
okay.
If you want Michelle to question too, I believe she's on standby as well.
Yeah, I lost my technical difficulty with my mouse pointer. So let's go to slide 196, if you don't mind.
James, I made Michelle Chalinsky the presenter. Everyone, I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Yeah.
We still struggle from home. We apologize.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. So next we will go over the DOH highlights, supplementals, and changes. All DOH providers that are required to complete a CFR complete a full CFR, which includes the following schedules: CFR 1, 2, 2A, 3, 4, 4A, 5, 6, the reconciliation schedule, and Schedule CFR I, CFR II, or II-A, and certification CFR IV. A list of DOH programs can be found in Appendix HH of the CFR manual. The following program codes were added in Section 67, Appendix HH of the CFR manual. These include programs code 1580, 2240, 2350, 2360, 2380, and 2390. Additionally, in Section 67, Appendix HH, the following program codes were added. Program code 2400, 2500, 2510, 2520, 2530, 8100, and 8110. When reporting a site code on the CFR, COH providers should use the first 4 digits of your agency code, followed by the first 3 digits of your program code. When reporting units of service, please refer to Appendix HH for the unit of service measurement for each DOH program. An integrated outpatient service clinic program is reported using programs code 2100 for OMH, 3520 for OASAS, and program code 1580 for DOH. An allocation between OMH, OASAS, and DOH must be made if the provider operated both OMH and OASAS clinics prior to being designated as an IOS clinic. Programs are required to maintain support demonstrating they have used a reasonable method of allocating costs. Please refer to Section 66, Appendix GG for additional instructions. Next, we'll go over the OCFS highlights, supplementals, and changes. OCF providers are required to complete a full CFR that includes the listed schedules. These schedules are the same as the schedules listed previously for DOH. A complete list of OCFS program codes can be found in Appendix II. These are the only programs that are required to be reported for OCFS providers. In Appendix R, Section 51 of the CFR manual, the following position title code was added for OCFS. Position code 327, Licensed Mental Health Counselor. In Appendix II, Section 68 of the CFR manual, the following programs were added. CFTSS Family Peer Support Services, Program Code 4900. CFTSS Mobile Crisis Intervention 4910. CFTSS Youth Peer Support and Training 4920. CFTSS Psychosocial Rehabilitation 4930. CFTSS Other Licensed Practitioner 4940. And CFTSS Community Psychiatric Support and Treatment 4950. OCF providers report a site code using the first 4 digits of the agency code and the first 3 digits of the program code. The units of service measurement can be found in Appendix II for OCF programs. That concludes this section of the CFR training. And here is your next speaker.
Oh, there it is. Hi, everyone. This is Paul Sutton with OASAS. I'll be discussing some of our latest highlights and changes. First, we have effective immediately, New York State OASAS has announced a name change. We are now the Office of Addiction Services and Supports. The acronym OASAS will remain the same, however. This new name will coincide with the launch of OASAS's redesigned website, offering a new, improved user experience and easier access to addiction information. Here are the contact informations for the various departments within OASAS. If you have budgeting questions or review questions or even payment or funding questions, you reach out to the appropriate departments at these addresses or phone numbers, and they can best help you. A CFR submission is not complete without the submission of the required certification schedules and audited or reviewed financial statements depending on the funding level. The preferred method of signature page financial statement submission is the electronic filing of the CFR-I, CFR-II, CFR-III, CFR-IV, and financial statements through the CFRS upload page. Providers must keep original signature certification schedules and attestation statements corresponding to those emailed for the required retention period and must be able to make these documents available upon request to OASAS and any other stakeholder or governmental controlling party. However, OASAS will continue to accept emailed PDF files of the CFR-I, CFR-II, III, IV, attestation, financial statements, and parent agency admin allocation. Examples of a proper naming are as follows. Now, whether uploading or emailing these certification schedules, please be sure to utilize this naming convention as shown. And copies of all required schedules submitted by email must be PDF files. Also, the DCN on emailed certification schedules must match the DCN of the uploaded CFR files, and the original signature copies maintained in the provider files as indicated above. For additional guidance, please refer to pages 214 and 215 of the CFR manual. In order for your certifications to satisfy the submission requirements, the following issues should be avoided: partial images, illegible copies, blurred images. And finally, a new CFR-I, CFR-III, and CFR-IV needs to be submitted for each new DCN number uploaded. Note that subsequent to a CFR-II being received, OASAS will accept an attestation reporting non-major changes in lieu of a new CFR-II. OASAS providers are responsible for updating their own contact information in the provider directory system shown below, at the link shown below. At time of staff changes, contact names, email addresses, and phone numbers should be updated. This will help ensure that providers and programs receive important communication from the OASAS Communications Office, as well as providing current contact names and phone numbers to prospective clients. Again, follow the link below to make those updates. The frequently asked questions section in Section 8 of the CFR manual now includes guidance stating that vital access provider revenue is a Medicaid fee-for-service payment and accordingly should be reported on the CFR-1, line 72A, DMH-1, line 18A, and DMH-2, line 17A. First, this should be Section 38, not Section 39, and it's actually Appendix E for OASAS. I apologize for that. But the following program codes with OASAS have been deleted and should no longer be used: 2240, 2350, 2360, 2380, 2390, and 2400, all relating to Child and Youth HCBS Consolidated Waiver Programs. following program code names and or descriptions have been modified in Appendix E of the CFR manual. Code 0465, Code 0850, 0950, 2780, and 2790. The gambling programs specifically were previously referred to as compulsive gambling. They're referred to as problem gambling now. Just make note of that. And codes 3039 and 3059 have been updated as well. So code 3100, 3500, 3510, 3520, 3528, 3530, and 3550. These have all been, the descriptions have been updated and revised recently as well. And moving on. 3551, 3560, 3570, 3580, 3600, 3970, 3980, 4072. Again, you can refer to the manual to see the full revised descriptions for these programs. In order to ensure accuracy, the Fiscal Audit and Review Unit, or FARU, will perform on-site visits, and the CFR Review Unit will perform desk reviews of the CFR submissions. Any areas that need additional explanation or revision will be detailed in a CFR review and emailed to the provider. Failure to respond to the review may lead to withholding of funding or revocation of certification. Accurate and complete CFR data for OASAS programs is critically important for OASAS fiscal policy development and analysis. Cost report data is also requested and used by other New York State agencies such as DOH, DOB, etc., and the federal government for a variety of different purposes. The following are some examples of items covered in OASAS's reviews. Are your signature pages, financial statements, etc. completed and submitted? Are all active programs reported? If applicable, have the units of service been reported on CFR 1, line 13, as per Appendix E, and do they reflect the MSDS? Does the CFR 2, column 1, lines 7, 9, and 10 match the financials? If not, is the reconciliation completed? Is the CFR 2A completed? Is the CFR 3 completed? If applicable, is line 38, parent agency allocation, completed and submitted? Are the non-allowable expenses reported on CFR 1, line 40, or CFR 3, line 17, adjusted out accordingly? Are the hourly equivalents on the CFR 4 within reason? The hourly equivalents are arrived at by dividing the total number, or dividing the total amount paid by the total hours paid. Is the CFR 5 completed if applicable? Is the CFR 6 completed? If so, is there an amount in column 9 which must be adjusted out on the CFR 3, line 41? And now I will pass this off to our next speaker.
Hi, it's Paul Green from OASAS. In addition to reviewing the core reports, certain expenses which are allowable on the core reports are considered non-reimbursable on the claim. To properly report these expenses, they should be reported fully on the core reports and the claim, then adjusted out of the claim accordingly. Some examples of these non-reimbursable expenses would be vacation leave accruals. All the vacation leave accruals, once transferred from the core to the claim, will automatically be removed. Depreciation expense, interest expense, real estate taxes, and mortgage expenses, these are all non-reimbursable expenses which you have to manually take out of the claim. Okay? OASAS does not allow service providers to budget for or claim depreciation or interest expense for aid to localities. OASAS does require a provider to expense fully all equipment and property purchases during the reporting period. The software has been modified to assist in the reporting of non-reimbursable expenses. We start with the number from the DMH1, and from there you can use drop-down boxes to add expensed items such as equipment or property, or subtract depreciation expense or interest expense. When the worksheets are saved, the net number will transfer to the DMH2, lines 9 and 10 accordingly. This is a screenshot of the equipment line. So again, in the drop-down box, the first line is the number that comes over from the DMH1. Then you have your additions and your subtractions, and the end result is your DMH2 line 9. Okay. There are some predefined subtraction lines, such as depreciation vehicle, depreciation equipment, interest vehicle, and such. We do the same thing for property. And there are some predefined lines for depreciation building, mortgage interest, real estate taxes, and such. Once you have made all those adjustments, the next thing to consider is administrative expenses. If we're not going to allow depreciation of property for a program, then we're not going to allow our portion of depreciation expense for administrative building. Okay? But it's only our portion. We realize that some of the other portion of that expense may go to other agencies. So we do this through a formula. The formula is written there, but I'm going to show you the next slide, which is a spreadsheet of how this is calculated. So on the far left, we add up all the administrative expenses that we consider non-reimbursable. Vacation leave accruals, interest, depreciation, real estate taxes, and such. The total is $39,000. That is the total non-allowable expenses in column A. Column B is the individual programs. Column C is the total operating expenses for that individual program. And then column D is the total operating expenses for all the programs. E is the mathematical calculation, and F is the result. So of the total, $1,400 of non-reimbursable expense belongs to program 2050-00. Okay. Then you would be responsible to go to that program, and under line number 12, under the drop-down box, you would type in admin depreciation adjustment, and you would put that amount. Also, early retirement incentive payments and severance pay, these can be reported in the DMH2, line 12. Related party expenses. If an expense is considered non-reimbursable for a provider, it would also be considered non-reimbursable for a related party. Therefore, if you pay rent to a related party and you are limited to the lower of fair market value or the related party's actual costs, any of the actual costs for that related party that would be considered non-reimbursable, such as depreciation, mortgage interest, and such, would not be allowed to be used in the calculation. There's additional guidance in the CFR manual for this, and we are available to help you if you have any issues working this out. But here's a screenshot from the CFR 5, Section C, and it's showing transaction ID number 1 has $10,000 of depreciation, $25,000 of mortgage interest. It does have insurance, property taxes, and other. So in this case, if you had paid all of this in the rent, the mortgage interest and the depreciation would definitely not be a reimbursable expense. The property taxes possibly may be, and the insurance would, and the other probably would. At the end of the review, we're going to send you an email. If you agree with these findings, then the CFR should be revised, validated, the new DCN number should be obtained, and the PDF should be sent to us for final review. Don't electronically upload it yet. Once we've looked it over, if everything is fine, we will tell you to go ahead and upload it and send in signature pages. If you do not agree with the findings, then provide additional explanation along with your supporting documentation and clarification of your position. That is the end of the OASAS section. I will now hand it off to the next speaker.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alpa Amin, and I work for OPWDD and will cover OPWDD highlights, supplements, and changes. OPWDD highlights. With regards to reporting of units of service, for supervised IRAs, report units of service corresponding to all billed therapeutic leave days and retainer days on CFR 1, line 13A under Program Code 0231. The units of service reported should include all actual units served, plus all therapeutic leave days that were billed, plus all retainer days that were billed at zero rate. For Respite Program 0311 and 0312, report each per diem billing as 96 quarter-hour units of service. Following program codes require site-specific reporting: 0090, 0204, 0231, 0227, and 1090. For Appendix FF, OPWDD allocation methodologies for specific program. After expenses have been allocated to programs according to Appendix J, agency may have to allocate expenses further in the case of day service for ICF residents or for site-specific reporting. This new appendix deals with allocation methodologies for program code 0090 all the way 1090 as listed. OPWDD 1 Schedule of Services. This is for ICF IID only. Each ICF IID sites require separate schedule for program code 0090 and 1090. The 7-digit operating certificate number must be used as a site code on OPWDD 1. If medical supplies is marked with an X in a column 2 or 3, complete an OPWDD 2 for that ICF IID site. OPWDD 2 schedule ICF IID medical supplies. For all ICF IID sites, if medical supplies were purchased by the ICF IID, OPWDD 1 line 6 other medical supplies, column 2 or column 3 and OPWDD 2 must be completed. A separate schedule must be completed for each site. Check the box next to each medical supply listed that was included in the cost reported on OPWDD 1 line 6 other medical supplies. OPWDD 5 capital schedules. The OPWDD 5 is used to capture property expenses for the following program code from 0090, 1090, 0200, 0202, 0204, 0205, and 0227. If you have been allocating some of your day habilitation or pre-vocational expenses to 0092, 0094, 0095, or to CFR 2 column 9, be sure to leave all property expenses in 0204, 0205, or 0227. OPWDD 5 requires site-specific reporting, although some of the programs have consolidated reporting in the CFR 1. For more information regarding completion of Schedule OPWDD 5, please refer to Section 30 of CFR Manual. This is OPWDD 5 Capital Schedule screenshot. If OPA site lists no property reimbursement for a program, then enter a 0 in both column 1 and column 2. Completion of OPWDD 5 is necessary to validate the submission. If there are no property payments to report in column 1, then column 2 should be 0. The expense listed in column 2 need not equal the expense listed on the line cited in column 3. Only that portion of the expense related to the property payment is to be reported. Please note that there is a new predefined entry to cover prior period property adjustments. Following program codes have been deleted from Appendix G of the CFR Manual: 1221, 1222, 1223, 1224, 2240 through 8110 as listed. The following programs code have been added: 0056, 0066, 0500, 0501, and 0502. Program code 0500, 0501, and 0502 are for MSC reporting by CCOs. The job title code 351 has been deleted. The job title code 302 and 303 have been added. The description of program code 209 has been modified. Funding source code 531, Empire State Supporting Housing Initiative, ESSHI, has been added. The FAQ in the section 8 of the manual regarding the reporting of to or from transportation expenses for the day habilitation and pre-vocational programs has been modified. OPWDD filers are required to create 12-month CFRs with the end dates of either June 30th or December 31st. Steps to a successful CFR submission: perform data entry for all schedules, then validate submission to get a document control number. Prepare for upload. Connect to the CFRS upload page on the OMH website and individually upload CFR data, financial statements, and certification. From the toolbar, select Utility and then select Validate Submission Assign DCM. This is the screen for Validate Submission Assign DCM. Here you click Perform Validation to validate the entire validation submission. If there are any errors, a message box pops up highlighting and detailing the error in yellow. If in most cases, clicking on the error will take the user to the screen containing the error. Correct any errors and repeat the validation process. When there are no errors in the submission, the following software will assign document control number. Now that the DCN number has been assigned, from the toolbar, select Reports in order to view or print all or specific schedule from your CFR. Here you have the option to select individual schedules or click Expected to highlight all schedule in the submission type completed. Clicking Send to Printer sends the document to the user's default printer. Please make sure it has a legal size paper in it. Clicking Write to File displays the document on the computer screen in Notepad. Inventory lists the program site defined and other identifying information about what is in the submission. This can be useful in diagnosing problems. Advanced allows for printing only selected NYS agencies and/or county schedules. Where is the current destination for Prepare for Upload file located? If your CFR software was installed to the default location, your upload file will be located in the directory dependent on your software version. Or you can use the Browse for New directory if you want to install the file in an alternative local or LAN location. After the upload file has been prepared, a confirmation messenger box pops up. Take note where you are saving the file by either printing the screen or saving to your desktop, as you will need to locate the file in the later step of submission process. Click Close to close the messenger box, and then click Go to CFRS Upload page. Pop-up window informs you that you are being redirected to OMH Upload portal page. Click Yes to continue. On this screen, from the bottom of the screen, select Upload your CFR submission or financial statement. You will also be able to upload the completed budget, certification pages, supplemental attestation schedule, and parent agency administration allocation from this screen. Here you enter your agency's 5-digit provider agency code and press Next. Choose type of the documents to upload from the drop-down box. Follow the steps as outlined in the software. Please note you will have to go through this process several times as the CFR, financial statements, and certifications need to be submitted separately. This is an example of confirmation email. It is recommended that you save a copy of this email. On this screen, this is to back up the data. From the toolbar, select Utility and then click Backup Data. You must close all screens in order to effect changes in the NYS banner page. The software will apply the changes to the last file that you were in. Please remember to back up your file in 2 or more locations. Converting CFR4 detail to CBR4. Please note the consolidated budget report is a series of schedules created in the CFRS software and used to fulfill fiscal reporting requirements related to the receipt of state aid. When importing a master data from CFR to a CBR or vice versa, there is a second step which includes using the Convert CFR4 to CBR4. This is the screen where you can change or delete funding source. This is the screen where you can update or delete agency definition. This is the screen which shows the links for online help regarding the new CFRS. The remainder of the presentation is directed toward agencies that submit a claiming document, DMH-2 and DMH-3. If your agency does not, then you may leave at this time. Agencies that file a claiming document include those receiving state aid or local aid in the form of net deficit funding. Agencies that do not file claiming document include OASAS, OMH, OPWDD providers that do not receive any state aid for any programs, and others. This concludes this section. Here is the next speaker.
Hi, this is Paul Green from OASAS again. So we're going to continue on with the claiming section. Again, claiming section is for providers that receive state aid, net deficit funding. If you're new at this game and you do not know the answer to that question right now, just sit tight. This is a short section, and go through it, and then you can verify it later whether it's going to be necessary for you or not. Okay? Budget modifications. If you haven't done so already, compare your projected expenses and revenues to your approved budget now. If it appears a modification to your approved budget is required, consult the funding New York State agency for guidance. It's always better to address it earlier than later. Claiming. This is the screenshot of the DMH-1. Once you are complete with the core reports, the DMH-1, and you feel pretty good about it, this is when you use the button on the bottom left-hand corner, the Transfer to DMH-2, in order to transfer the information from the DMH-1 to the DMH-2. You can then go into the DMH-2 and make changes, but it's the best way to make sure that all the programs get transferred and all the information gets transferred. Okay? This is the screen that you will see once you click on that Transfer to DMH-2. Over to the right, highlighted in blue, I have 3 programs that I wish to transfer. There's a total of 5 programs, but only 3 of them are for New York City. The other 2 may be for Westchester. So down in the left, I select New York County number 31. I select 100%. I select the 3 programs that I want transferred, and then I click Transfer Programs. It comes up with a warning. You already have information. Do you want to override it? And the answer is yes. The reason this comes up is you may end up transferring this data several times. Every time you go back and make changes to the core, you may end up having to transfer this data over again. Okay. So once you select yes, it will say that the data was successfully transferred. But note, some of the DMH-2 lines require detail. Okay. So here's an example of that. You're looking at the DMH-2, you're looking at line 17A. There's an asterisk next to it. The asterisk means there's a drop-down box, okay? Also, if it's a different shade of gray than the rest of the lines, that usually means that there's a drop-down box. Well, in this case, the total, $449,000 transferred over, but the details in the drop-down box did not. So you would have to click on that and go in and write base Medicaid $449,000, and that way you're going to have all the information on the claim. Okay. So again, the totals transfer over, but the drop-down detail box data does not. So you will have to go in order to validate submission. Again, most of the data transfers over, but not all of it. Okay, so a couple of things that you do have to report, you have to input in the beginning is contract type. Is it a direct contract or a local contract? And you select that right in the middle of those two radial buttons. Okay, direct contract means that the money is coming directly from the state of New York. Local contract is coming through the local county, local government unit, LGU. Direct contract generally has a state contract number that starts with a C0 something, okay? So in line 2, you have to put in the state contract number, and again, C0 something. Local contract could be any array of numbers or letters, okay? But that would normally be written on your contract, okay? Above that on line 1, accounting method. As was stated earlier, you can use accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis. So you have to choose which one you want to use. Then you go on to the expenses. And a majority of those have already been transferred over because you used that transfer button. Okay. If you did not use that transfer button, these expenses would, these lines would be empty, and you would have to fill this in. And you would have to verify that it matches the core. So again, it's best to transfer it. However, if there's any amount here that needs to be changed, these are white lines, which means you can change that number. If you're going to change it, you have to make sure that you have the right to change it, and you should consult the CFR manual to do so. The equipment and property, those are darker gray, so those are drop-down boxes, and the equipment lines for OASAS, as I said earlier, you would back out the depreciation and add equipment and such there. The total expenses here, line 13, is $776,000. The purpose of the claim is to determine how much and to settle what state aid was given to you and how much you get to keep and such. So total expenses are important to know. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract the revenue that you received from other sources besides state aid, okay? Because state aid is the last dollar in. So you're supposed to try to get revenue from any other source that you can first. We'll take the total expenses, we'll subtract all the other revenue, and that becomes your net operating cost. Net operating cost is the amount that we will give you in state aid up the lower of net operating costs or the amount agreed upon in the contract. Okay, so I'll show you that. This is $776 in total expenses. The next schedule is all the revenues. The total revenues are $842. So you actually received more revenue than your expenses, including $174 of net deficit funding on line 28. Okay. So we go to the next screen. We take this the total expenses less all the revenue except for the 174 comes down to line 43, which is a net operating cost of $108,000. Okay, so we gave you net deficit funding of 174, but we're going to let you keep the lower of the contract amount 174 or the net operating cost 108. Okay, so line 43 net operating cost is an important line to consider. The next tab over is deficit funding. Okay, this is where you report your how much state share, local government, non-funded, and such. Line 49, total deficit funding, must equal line 43 in order to validate. Okay, so this is going to have to equal that line 43, the net operating cost that we just discussed. So for OASAS, if we gave you 174 of net deficit funding, but yet you only can report up to 108, that's how much you would report right there. Okay, so OASAS state share would be $108,000. The only other alternative, after you fill in lines 44, 45, and 46, the only other alternative is if the total on line 47 is higher than 108, then you would put in the non-funded amount and you would put it in as a negative number. So if you had if you determined that your state funding was higher than 108, you would have to put in a negative number as non-funded in order to bring it down to 108 in order to validate submission. Okay. If you have any questions on this, it does get a little bit complicated. You can speak with your individual agency about it, or your claims department for that matter. So the last tab, we've gone through expenses, revenues, we've gone through adjustments to revenues, which more of that is written in the CFR manual. Then we've gone through the deficit funding. Now the last tab is the expense variance. Okay. Expense variance tab is basically a comparison of the DMH1 to the DMH2 and an explanation of any differences. So in this example, personal services are the same, which is what we would expect. Vacation leave accruals changed. It was a variance of $10,000 negative, and the reason is because OASAS does not allow any vacation leave accruals to transfer to the DMH2, okay? So adjustment for VLA, that's all you have to write in there. You don't have to get into a long paragraph, just something to explain to us why there is a difference, okay? In the past, we would compare this and we would send you an email during our review saying, please explain the difference here. What we're trying to do is be proactive and ask you to explain it first, and that way maybe we don't have to send the email. Okay. So line 10 says adjustment for equipment depreciation. So you subtracted your equipment depreciation. That's fine. And then line 13 is adjustment for a percentage of admin expense. So that's what the expense variance is. It was new only a couple of years ago. Again, you don't have to write long paragraphs, and if there is no difference, if it's a zero variance, then you don't have to write anything. But if there is a variance, a numerical variance, then you do have to write something, or else you will receive an error on validation. Okay? So that's completing the DMH2. It's important that it be done correctly, and if you have any questions or concerns, you can contact us individually and work on it. There's a couple other things here that you can do. It's called define a DMH-only program. Okay. This doesn't happen often. However, sometimes the county or the state may ask you to take one column of data and break a portion of that out and report it in its own column. Okay? As I say, it doesn't happen often, but if it does, after this, you'll be prepared on how to do that. There was an example years ago where there was a $30,000 amount that was given for furniture, and we wanted that reported separately in its own column. So we wanted you to define a DMH-only program. So you clicked on that button up in the top left, and it came up with a screen in the middle and says, please select the program, 2050 we selected, and then you want to enter the index code. So you're creating a new index code for the same program. So you select 2050-04. So now you have a screen and you have a column for 2050-04. So now you can take $50,000 out of 2050-00 and move it over to 2050-04, and now you have basically separated one program into two columns. Okay. So again, it's just a matter of if there is a legitimate reason why the agencies want you to separate it out, this is how you would do it. The only trick is if you're going to put $50,000 into column 2, you've got to remember to remove it from column 1, because the two columns combined should equal the total correct amount. Okay, so that's called define a DMH only program. The DMH2 is completed on a New York State agency and county specific basis. The method of accounting must be indicated over each column containing fiscal data and can be reported on full accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis of accounting. Direct or local contract types must be selected and a contract number entered for each reported program. Direct contracts start with a C0, generally. If there is no local contract, then enter the first 7 letters of the county name. If the county name is 7 letters or less, enter the complete county name. Agency administration is distributed between New York State agencies using the ratio value allocation methodology. Within OASAS and OPWDD schedules, the software calculated ratio value must be used. Equipment may be expensed rather than depreciated. Equipment costs of $5,000 or more per unit and having a useful life of 2 or more years must be reported on line 9. Revenue details must be provided on the other lines. Approved New York State software provides line detail box to enter this data. Line detail boxes are also provided for the following types of revenue. New York State CFRS software only transferred line detail box totals from DMH1 to DMH2. The detail information must be re-entered on a DMH2. Okay. So as I said, you may complete this core, transfer the information to the claim, make your adjustments, and feel good about the CFR, submit the CFR, which case we will review it. And if we find an expense in the core that we feel is not allowable, we will ask you to correct that, which case you will go back to the core and make that adjustment. And then before you go to upload it to us again, you have to remember to retransfer that information over to the claim again, okay? Because by making a change on the CFR4 does not automatically flow to the DMH2. Okay. So remember to retransfer any corrections to the core. That's the end of the DMH2. The DMH3 is the second part of the claiming contracts, claiming schedules. The DMH3 is all about funding source codes. What source did the money come from that was given to you as revenue? Okay. Some agencies have many funding source codes. Others have only a few. So just starting with this one, up in the top left, you select your state agency, OASAS. Over to the right, you select the county Niagara in this particular case. And then below that is the program. Below that is the funding source. There's a drop-down box. You can select the funding source, and once you've done that, then down at the bottom, you fill in the white lines. Number of persons served per year, total number of units of service, total adjusted expenses. So this is coming from your DMH2, your total adjusted expenses, less applied net revenue. Net revenue is all the revenue you received except for net deficit funding. Okay? Net operating cost will be the amount that was calculated on a DMH2. So the information from the DMH on the DMH3 is very similar. It comes from the DMH2. However, it does serve a different purpose. If you had more than one funding source code, maybe some of the expenses would be from one funding source code, and the other one, the rest of the expenses would be from another funding source code. But nonetheless, the DMH3 has to be completed. The contract number on line 15 should match the contract number on the DMH2. If for some reason you find that the funding source has changed from last year to this year, you would, if you create a new funding source in the middle, if you just select a new funding source, then it won't actually get rid of the old funding source. You could go to utilities and scan down and then delete funding source. You could do that. But the best way to do it is select the one that you were working on, and then from the bottom left, click on Change Funding Source. A screen comes up in the middle. You select what you want to change to. You click on Complete Update, and then it has been changed, and there's no duplication. Okay. If you forget to use the Change Funding Source, and you go to Validate, it will say you have an extra funding source with no data in it. Okay, and then you'll know, oh, I transferred in last year's funding source of one code, but I changed it this year, and now I have to get rid of last year's. And how you would do that is you'd go to Utilities and delete funding source. Okay, so save yourself some work by remembering to use the button down on the bottom left-hand corner, Change Funding Source. It saves you some work. It's the same thing for the county. If when you're doing this, if the county changed for some reason, then you could select Change County down at the bottom and then complete the update, and the information will not be duplicated. Okay. This is an old example here where there was two funding source codes for one program. So 072B is the first of the two funding source codes, and you'll see on line 12, total adjusted expenses were $485,000, okay? Less the applied net revenue, that would be all the revenue except for net deficit funding, and then there's a contract number and such, okay? Over to the right, you'll see it's a running total of all the expenses and for all the funding source codes for this program. So in other words, the total expenses over to the right are $972,000. Therefore, there must be more than one funding source code for this program. So if we go to the next screen, it's 073B, and the total adjusted expenses are $487,000, which with the first funding source code equal the $972,000. Okay. So again, over to the right, that is a running total of all the funding source codes for this program. So that might help you in the future. For OASAS and OMH, the contract number and type indicated for each program on DMH2 will be transferred to the DMH3. For OPWDD, at least one contract number and type combination indicated for each program on DMH3 must match the information indicated for that program on DMH2. The DMH3 is completed on a New York State agency and county specific basis. Funding source codes are found in Appendix N of the CFR manual. Contract numbers must be entered. Contract type must be designated state or local. For each funding source code, persons served per year, units of service, total adjusted expenses, applied net revenue, total operating cost per funding source is calculated. Refer to budget for funding source codes and amounts. And the total program gross revenues on a net DMH3 must equal what is reported on DMH2. I realize the DMH3 is a little confusing, but I will say the software helps you an awful lot. If you type in even one number and then hit save, it will tell you exactly what you have done wrong. It will tell you to change this number to that, change this number to that, and change this number to that. Okay? So the software does help you when it comes time to do the DMH3. So on that note, I'm going to return you to the host.
All right, guys. Thank you once again for participating in the second session of the CFR training webinar series for the 1920 fiscal year consolidated fiscal report. Some items before you leave, in case you missed the beginning of the webinar. Please take some time to fill out the post survey after you leave the event. It'll help us make these trainings better as we go on. And also, we want to make note that in the beginning we mentioned that we've included the new schedule in the next CFR. So the schedule is called COVID-19. And after this webinar is done, we strongly encourage you guys to go read through the next slides, and then submit any questions you have to the OMH's email, which is OMH or CFR@omh.ny.gov. We've built some time into that webinar series to address these questions. So if we can get the questions ahead of time, we'll have some time to talk about those tomorrow, and that'll make that session much better. So other than that, I want to thank you guys for participating, and we hope it was very helpful for you.